Hey, Liam here from DigiWaza Multimedia. Thanks for joining me in this Blender 2.83 tutorial. In this episode, we're going to be creating a 5C collet rack. A collet rack is a storage device for 5C collets, and if you're not sure what those are, they're a way of holding tools or tooling in a lathe or a mill in a machine shop. I have a set of 16 of them, and I'd like to organize them a little better, so let's get to work. All right, first things first, let's come right over here to our units. Let's click that. I want it to be metric. I'm going to change this scale right here to backspace 0.1, enter. That's the setting that works the best for me in Cura. You'll have to mess around with that in your particular slicer. I've had some issues when I just leave it at 1, so enough said. I'm going to come down here where it says length. Let's change that to millimeters. Okay, so we're ready to go. We're in the metric system. 0.1 is our unit scale, and our length is millimeters. All right, if we hit N while we're out here in object mode, we'll see the dimensions of our object. Now, I know the dimensions that I want, so in the X, I want it to be backspace 188, enter. And on the Y, I want it to be 218. And on the Z, I want it to be 10. Okay, so that gives us our dimensions and shrinks our plate down to a usable size. Before we move on, I'm going to right-click, Shade Smooth. We're going to come over to our control panel down here in our Object Data Properties. We're going to click it. We're going to go to Normals, Auto Smooth, and just kick it up above 30 slightly. All right, we're ready to move on to the cutters. I'm going to hit Alt-A. Shift A, we're going to hit a mesh, and then we're going to select a cylinder. All right, so the cylinder is going to come in kind of big, so let's just go with it. All right, before we click on our cylinder or change anything about it, let's come down to its control panel, which is right down here. I'm going to change vertices to 72. Okay, so 72 vertices, I find that makes it pretty smooth. The rest of this, we could change radius and stuff here, but we're going to do it over here, so it's no big deal. You can either hit this triangle here to get rid of the menu or just click on the cylinder. I'm going to right click, Shade Smooth. We're going to come over here to our control panel. Again, we're going to go to this Object Data Properties and click Normals. And then we're going to go to Auto Smooth and just kick it up above 30, somewhere around there. Okay, cool. Now let's change its dimensions. I happen to know the dimensions. The collet that I'm making this for is 30 millimeters in diameter, and so I'm going to leave it at 32 millimeters just so it's not a perfect fit, but has a little bit of room, just so I can get them in and out pretty easy. So I'm going to come right over here to the Y, and we're going to change it to 32, and then we're going to change the we changed the X and the Y to 32. That'll give us a diameter of 32 millimeters. And then let's change the Z to 32 as well, just to keep it looking reasonable. All right, cool. Now if we zoom in, we can see that we have a cutter. It's going through both sides, or the top and the bottom of our main plate, which is what we need for a Boolean operation, which is what we're going to use to cut the holes. But first, let's set up the hole pattern. So I'm going to hit 7 on the numpad to go into top view. I'm going to hit the this movement here to get the gizmo. You could use G and Y and X and all that kind of stuff, but I like to just drag it along. We're going to put this over here somewhere in the corner to start the pattern. I want it to be about the same distance from the edge as it is from the top, so let's just mess with that a little bit. Once we think it looks pretty good, which this looks pretty fine, if we go over here, we can add a modifier by hitting the wrench. Add modifier, we can go to array, and we'll see that it gives us another one. We can go to count 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That'll give us 4 of them. And then we can come down right here where it says relative offset. The one that has a number 1 on it, that's the one we want. Hover over it, left click, and then we can just move them out. If you hold the shift key down while you do that, it'll move a lot slower. So we want the same distance from this side to that side, so just left click and drag it over. Something like that looks pretty close. I'm just eyeballing it. All right, I'm going to call that good, I think, somewhere in there. All right, cool. With that array selected, I can simply hit Shift D, and that'll duplicate them, and I can hit left click and they'll stay right where they are. Then I can use the gizmo to drag these down just a little bit. Let's give them about the same distance between them as there is from the top. Somewhere like that. All right, now I'm going to hit Shift left click to make sure that both arrays are now selected, and then we can hit Shift D. They should turn white. We can hit left click, and then we can drag those two new ones down to the bottom. We want them to be about the same distance from the bottom as the others are from the top. That looks pretty good. Okay, cool. So we've got our cutters in place. Now let's apply the modifiers. We'll left click, apply, left click, apply, left click, apply, and left click and apply. Now let's hit Shift left click to select all of the cutters. Then we'll right click and join them together into one object. Now we can hit the plate, so it's selected. We can go to Add Modifier. We can go to Boolean. We can come right here where it says Object. We can take its picker and we can pick the cutters. And then we want a difference, which it's set to by default. We can hit Apply. And now if we hit the select the cutters and move them out of the way, we'll see that we've made holes through the plate. We can hit X to delete those cutters. The next thing we need is a countersink to fasten this down as an actual rack. In the end product, it's going to have a piece of wood at the bottom. There's going to be some kind of a fastener going through, and probably through a piece of tubing that makes a spacer so that these 5C collets can slide down in and sit on a base underneath here. I'm probably going to use some kind of nice wood so it looks nice. All right, let's make that cutter. I'm going to hit Shift A. We're going to add in a mesh. We're going to add a cylinder. It's going to be the same cylinder as from before because it remembers our settings, which is fine. We're going to leave it big for now. I'm going to click on it so our menu goes away. Let's hit Tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to hit Alt-A to deselect. And then we're going to hit Control-R to create an edge loop. And then I'm going to bring that somewhere probably right around here. I'm going to go below it down in this lower half and do it again. Control-R, that'll leave an edge loop. Okay, so now I can take these two bottom edge loops. This one's already selected. I come down to this one, hold down Shift and Alt, and then left click. I'll get that other loop. We can simply scale this in just a bit. And then we can hit 3 on the numpad, which will give us side view. I'm going to hit the gizmo again so I can see what's going on. And then I'm just going to lift these up slowly until these line up right here. You can see how I just pull them up till they line up. Okay, I'm going to hit Alt-A to deselect everything. Let's hit Alt left click in between some vertices on this bottom ring, and then we can just pull this down like so. All right, so that was kind of a drawn out deal. All right, let's hit Tab to go into object mode, right click to shade smooth. We're going to come to our control panel, auto smooth, just like we've been doing. And then we're going to scale this down. Right now it's 2,000 meters. I know that I want this to probably be about 9 millimeters right here. So let's just scale it till it says 9 millimeters. Zoom in to see what's going on. We can scale again just till it comes down into the 9 millimeter range. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, somewhere like that, 915 will be fine. I'm going to hit 3 to go into side view. And then I'm going to get in close, and let's pull this countersink up in here just a little bit. Now it needs to protrude through the top and the bottom. And then let's hit SZ, in fact, just to make this taller and longer, to make this countersink area more prevalent. Let's pull it down in here just a little bit. Something like so. I want the countersink to go down in a little further. In fact, let's pull it up just a little bit so it's about halfway. All right, that looks pretty good. It's going through both sides. We can hit 7 on the numpad. Can drag it up to the top. I'm going to, oopsie, dragged it off the screen. Let's see where'd it go. That's happens a lot. All right, so let's come and drag it over here to the corner where it goes and just put it right about there. That looks pretty good. Same distance from the side as the top. Let's back that out just a little bit. Let's drag that up just a little bit. And we could see the distance is about the same. All right, let's hit Shift D, and then let's drag this over so it's about the same. Something like so. And that looks pretty fair. All right, let's hit Shift and left click this side so we can see. Hit Shift D, left click, and then we can drag that down. Put those there. That looks pretty good. Something like that. Okay, and then these two are selected, and then let's hit Shift, left click, and select. We only want to select the actual countersinks. So we want all four selected. Then we can hit right click and join. And then we can grab the plate, come over here to our control panel, hit the wrench, add modifier, Boolean. We can then take this object picker, left click it, and then pick these joined cylinders. We want this to be a difference operation. We can simply apply. We can select those and move them out of the way and hit X and delete, and we can see that we have countersunk holes now. All right, last operation, Shift A. Let's add a text. There it is. Let's hit over here in the control panel, we'll hit the A, and then let's come down to geometry. And then we can come to extrude, and we want to extrude it just a little bit. We're not going to bevel, so we won't be using bevel. Sometimes you would. Let's go to font. We'll come down here to where it says regular, slide over to the file folder. And then I'm going to go down quite a ways here. I have Windows Pro 10, and so it is has a lot of fonts in here. Yours may not have some of these fonts. Anyways, I forgot what the name of the font. You think I would have written it down. And here it is right here. So I'm going to click and open the font. All right, there we go. And now let's change what it says by hitting Tab to go into edit mode. We get our familiar text tool. We can back up. And then I'm going to put in 5C. Actually, let's backspace. I want a dash in there. And then let's spell C-O-L-L-E-T-S. And we're good to go. Let's hit Tab to go into object mode. Let's look at it from the top with a 7 on the numpad. Let's scale the text down. And then let's move it around until it looks right. And then I'm going to scale it just a little bit more. Something like that. It's looking pretty close. Oh, lost the text because it's inside. It's easy to just collect it again right up here by hitting text. And then looking from an angle, we need to pull it up through so it's protruding. That looks pretty good. One last thing we need to do is, right now it's technically a curve. If we right click in object mode, it'll give us this option here, convert to mesh. Now it's a mesh, which we can use in a Boolean. If we select our main plate, go to the wrench for modifiers, add a modifier, add a Boolean. We can use this picker. We can simply collect the text. Should say text in this box. And this time, instead of difference, we want it to be a union. And so let's apply that. Now when we click on the text, we can drag that out of there, hit X and delete, and now we've joined it all together. Okay, so let's click it. Let's hit Tab to go into edit mode, Z to go into wireframe, and we can see that it actually created a cool manifold mesh. So that's pretty cool. Let's hit Z to go back into solid, Tab to go back into object. Okay, cool. So one last thing we need to do is we need to make sure that our scale is all 1, 1, 1. We're in object mode. We have it selected. We can hit Control A, and then right here we can pick scale. That'll apply our scale and make all these ones. You could have also just typed it in, but it's just easier to do it that way. And we can see our dimensions have been kept true, except for it looks like for some reason our z-axis went to 13 millimeters. So let me change that again. Enter. Okay, cool. So we're at 10 millimeters. All of our measurements are where they are. Our text and everything looks good. Okay, so last step, let's export. So let's file, export, STL, and then I'm going to put mine on my desktop. I'm just going to click here. Let's name this by hitting backspace in this column. And I'm going to put 5-C3, enter. And then we want to come over here to this part right here that says selection only. Let's click on it. Our scale is 1, Everything looks good. It's going to the desktop. Let's go ahead and export. Okay, that should be on the desktop, ready to go into the slicer of choice and ready to be 3D printed. At the end, I'll show a little bit of footage of this actually printing. And I really thank you for watching, and hope to see you in the next one. Just a little bit of an amendment here. A couple things. I changed the size from 10 millimeter or 13 millimeter back to 10 millimeter. I forgot that the letters are raised as well. That's what the 13 millimeters is. So I hit Control Z to bring it back to 13 millimeters. One other issue I had here was that I used 32 millimeters as my cutter size. I measured on my collets at the very bottom where it's threaded. It said it was 30 millimeters, but the body of it's actually a little bit larger. So if you're going to follow along with this tutorial, make sure that you make the cutters probably in the 35 millimeter zone, maybe 36 millimeters, and they'll actually slide all the way through until they stop at the part that gets a little bit bigger. The collets still fit here, as you'll see in the little slideshow at the end, but only the threaded part does, so they stick in here. So I modified my plan just a little bit. I used some screws that went in here, and then I used a little bit of fuel line as the little bit of a foot, and it just made a lower rack. So there is no lower piece of wood. And then these become kind of a low profile, which turned out to be kind of a good thing because now it'll fit into a drawer quite easily. Anyways, so the 13 millimeters at the end were really because there was letters involved. So I changed it back by hitting Control Z. And you might want to make your cutters just a little bit larger if you're trying to get the 5Cs to slip right through. I don't think I'll change it on this particular rack, but for my R8 collet set, I'm definitely going to open that up just a little bit so that they can actually go through all the way through. Anyways, I have a slideshow going at the end with some footage of the print and a little bit of a mistake there, but I like to leave that in just so you know everybody makes mistakes. You're going to make them, I make them, and it's just part of the process. So thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.